space as an imbalance. This is one of the other kind of obvious imbalances. I mean, literally, it's the most visible imbalance. Like, who would you rather have? Would you rather have, this side with a massive advantage in, space, or would you rather have this side and be completely crushed, right? You'd rather have white. Space is one of the hardest imbalances to get a good grasp of because space can be a traitor at times. If you have a lot of extra space, it doesn't necessarily mean that's a good thing. Because the definition of space is the side who is to push their pawns further and whose pawns control the area of the board that is their opponent. So like if we consider what's our space count right now, if we just consider the pawns, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not going to do the rest, but I'll just highlight 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, based on what our pawns are controlling, 8. Well, this one's already controlled, so 8, 9, 10, 11. We got an 11 square pawn structural space advantage. For black, they're currently controlling only 2 squares on our side of the board, the d4 and f4 squares. Now, those are good squares to have, but that's nothing compared to 11 squares, right? So this space advantage is very clear. White has a space advantage on the king side, on the queen side, and in the center. You can have a space advantage on the king side and a space disadvantage on the queen side, or vice versa, or you can have a space cramp in the center, but your wings are really strong. So this one just happens to show a space advantage on all sides of the board. Let me show you how to win this position, because it's actually rather simple to win with a massive advantage in king safety. In pawn structure here. So what you'll learn with pawn structure is you need to play slowly. Do not try to force it. This is what we call a static advantage, so it doesn't go away, right? You can't just, make a move and oops, I lost my space advantage. Bang, too bad, right? That doesn't happen. You don't lose your space advantage that way. The way you would lose it is if you blundered all of your pawns, or you advanced them and they got taken, or your opponent pushes for a long, long time and then they get the space advantage. It just doesn't go away like that. So it's static, it's long term. You don't have to worry about losing it. Like for instance, if you're up material, you have to worry about losing it potentially. You got to watch the tactics, but this is a lot more long term. So be laid back and just slowly crush. Now, which side do we want to attack on? I say the king side, because I am an attacking homeboy. I will come at your king with everything I've got. I will sacrifice whatever I need, and I will leave no stone unturned, or really no stone thrown away from your castle to ensure that your king is bare and ready to be eaten by my minions. Whichever minions are left, I don't even really care. As long as I have 1 or 2 there to devour your king, that's all that matters to me. So I'm going to take it slowly, though. I am really hungry. I'm ready to win the game. I want the king's flesh in my teeth and the blood to come out of my mouth. That's actually really gross. Let's not talk about this anymore. And it's going to come. But I know, as an experienced chess player, that I'm going to be very calm and take my time. So rook g1. Now, if black does absolutely nothing, they're going to get mauled. And so they might as well try to open something up. You need your pieces to have space, right? I mean, look at this bishop. We're just talking about imbalances for minor pieces. Look at these 2 bishops. They can literally go nowhere. Our bishops are a lot more active. Their bishops, or their knights, are also pretty useless. Our knights have a lot more squares to go to. So space often kind of gives you other advantages, namely minor piece imbalances, because your pieces can just be more mobile. So let's say they go pawn to b6. This one makes a lot of sense because he wants to try to open up the side of the board our king's on. At this point now, we've got almost everyone ready for the attack. So let's jump in. Pawn to g5. This is a massive move because there is now no way to prevent our rooks from opening up onto the king's position. If I were black here, I would only consider one move, which would be pawn to h5. If you don't go pawn to h5, your butt's busted. Why? Because I'm going to go actually G takes H5, which I think is the more precise move. You'll see why, because it doesn't allow this bishop into the defense. So like, let's say you go B takes A5, I'm going to go G takes H6. Rook takes is coming on the next turn. Or also actually just H takes G7 is probably lights out. So let's say he goes King takes H7. Now I can advance with check, and the king comes over. Now it's not over just yet, but after the move Queen G2, you might see that I have a nice tactic. If black doesn't do anything, like let's say they attack my knight, which I say isn't doing anything because it literally, what's a knight compared to a king? Don't get sidetracked when your opponent attacks you. Attack back, attack faster. Now I can do one of two moves. I can go Rook G8 or Rook H7. I like this beautiful sacrifice, and I'm going to follow that up with Queen to G7 mate. The only way to stop this would have been to sacrifice your knight to try to block the file temporarily. So this, of course, is what would happen if you just allow me to take. So that means basically black has to try to close down this side of the board. Now, it would be kind of a mistake for me to go G6, because then, like, what are my rooks doing? My rooks literally look completely useless behind a wall of pawns, and maybe I've got really good chances to win. Like this H-pawn will be very vulnerable. I can move my knight out of the way, like if I did this. I can move my knight out of the way, bring my queen over, take here, and then take here, or go to Queen H7 mate. But that gives my opponent a lot of time to relax, or to prepare for my attack. So I'm just going to go with G takes F6. Bishop takes F6 is the most natural move, and it prevents, for the time being, this threat. But my attack's not over. To be a good attacker, you need to be a good tactician. Bishop to H6. Now let's say they go knight takes, and then we see queen takes. Now, quite arguably, the best move would be something like bishop to G5 here, which would try to cut off my... Actually, no, I could just go rook takes in that case. I'm not really sure if there's anything to do here. Obviously, the queen cannot be captured, and my threat is just to go rook takes G7, bishop takes G7, rook takes G7, which would be mate. So like, let's say they go rook to F7 to defend said pawn. And now, who knows what I want to do right now. I could try and just bag my queen up, bring my knight in, bring my knight into E6, force the bishop to give itself up for my knight on G5. Or I'm looking for something a little bit more direct. So, for instance, the move that I would very highly consider here would be a move like rook to G5. The idea of going rook to H5. This looks nasty. Bishop takes G5. Sure. Rook takes G5. And now my threat is pretty obvious. So you have to go knight F6. And I guess at this point, it is going to be a little bit of a challenge. Maybe I rushed this a bit. But I'm still not too deterred from my attack, because I know, for instance, that I should be able to do something as simple as bishop to E2. And the point is, I'm just going to move my knight, and there's not much you can do. So, for instance, king F8 doesn't work. You can't get out of the pen. Rook. Let's say the queen goes up. Then we can go knight H2. Again, I don't really know what maybe they could start attacking over here. And then we can just capture this guy. The rook would have to come over to E7. Because if it went to F8. Actually, it could go to F8 here. So that would be the most strong defensive move here. And then I guess at this point, the winning try would be like... Oh, wait, I actually have to capture here first. And then after, let's say, well, you can't go queen takes. You got to go rook takes. And then I'm just going to go something like knight H5. And this looks pretty good for me. Let's say queen F7. Queen. Oh, I don't know. I might have gotten a little bit ahead of myself here on the attack, but still, I think I'm quite happy with the progress. For instance, I might just go knight takes, queen takes, rook up, queen back to E7, and then I can just I can just go queen h5. I'm going to go queen g5. She'll say rook f7. The attack is just so strong still. I don't know. Rook b8. Oh no, rook b8 gets forked. Literally, black doesn't have much. Knight h8. Bring the queen in, and then just I guess bust the king up. The game is over. I think that the knight, rook, queen is going to prove to be better than the two rooks and king with an open king himself. Space advantage is a massive yet invisible advantage. You can't really understand why space gives you an advantage necessarily so easily, but you can see it. So believe it. Space is good. If you can get space, take it. The only thing I would caution about space, like for instance, this pawn is gaining space, but it's not strong. So be careful when you push your pawns too far. Make sure they're defendable. For instance, my king can go over and capture his space gainer without having to worry about anything. So as long as your pawns are safe, your space advantage is very important.